Hello there. Welcome to And You Know This. I am Katura Kendrick, your host, and here is what I believe. I believe not only does your life know exactly what it wants, it has always known what you need. Thing is, you got to really get good at silencing all the voices around you so you can hear your life and hear it tell you what it wants and what you need. My guest today is living proof of it. I am so privileged to have with me the Nicole Bannister. How you doing?
I'm doing so good, Sarah. How are you?
I am well, thank you for asking. And is super geeked about this conversation. So let's get into it. Before we get into it too deep, let's start with tell us who you are, Nicole, and what brings you joy.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me here. I too am geeked to be here. Okay, this is gonna be a great conversation. Who I am, my name is Nicole Bannister, aka Nikki Banz. Okay, when I work with government clients, I use Nicole Bannister. When I work on the streets, people call me Nikki Banz. That's the distinction.
I love it. Like when I'm on them streets, I got a
Yeah.
different name. I'm the manager.
Yes, let's be honest. There's a couple different lives I be living these days, okay? So when people ask me who I am, I have to start off with saying that I am half Black American, half Iranian. So my dad was born and raised in the United States, Black American. My mom immigrated to the United States from Iran when she was 16. So for me, my entire life has been at the intersection of different worlds. I knew from the jump that the world was not black and white because my dad would have one opinion about one thing, my mom would have another opinion about another thing, and then they would look at me and look at my younger brother Julian and say, "Okay, what do you two think?" So I knew from the start that there were always so many different perspectives out there, so many different backgrounds, so many different ways to think about the world and to move through the world. And that has really guided me throughout my life as I think about work, as I think about what I want to do in this world, the impact that I want to make, the legacy that I want to make. And I like to describe myself now as a TV show host, as a presenter, as a global MC. That's some of the work that I do. But really, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm a social justice champion. And any way that I can create a world for people of color that is more just, more equitable, amplify their needs, their desires, their voices. That is what I choose to do. And I do that through the US government. I do that through the United Nations. I do that through TV and media and social media. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to slot myself into this big bad world that we're a part of. And when I think about what brings me joy, I love that you asked me that question, Katura. What brings me joy is being able to live a life that is authentic to me. When I get the chance to just be authentically myself, when I get the chance to live my life no holds barred, when I get to live my life in the way that I think is best for me and not what society deems best for me, not what capitalism deems best for me, not what patriarchy thinks is best for me, not what white supremacy thinks is best for me. When I get to live my most authentic life, that is what brings me joy. And I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of it right now, but we still got a long way to go. It's a process.
Yeah, listen, that's why you're here. First of all, you were dropping bars just now, and I appreciate all them bars that you dropped. And this whole idea of living an authentic life and not what capitalism says, not what white supremacy, not what patriarchy says, is why I brought you here today. Because I fell upon you having another interview on one of my favorite podcasts, the Picky Girl Travels podcast. I love Adelia. I've been on the show, and we had a good little gab fest. And I thought you would be perfect for this series I'm doing because, as you know, I want to be able to give younger women a tool from older aunties of different generations. Because I think that whole, especially not allowing capitalism to be the guiding principle in your making specifically choices about how you earn your living, how you work, and how you pursue your passion. And having said that, we want to start now with where you are now, having this fabulous life where, like, you just got back from Oman, put on some makeup, got your hair done, came on
Yes.
here to talk to me, and now you're going to be heading to, you said India, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you are now. But I want to start with your working a typical 9 to 5 job in the nonprofit world? Like, give us just a quick summary of what you were doing before you made this shift when you were working, doing pretty important work in the nonprofit sector. Just give us what you were doing in that area.
Absolutely. I started the first decade of my career in international development and diplomacy. And it's funny now when people see me like on stages interviewing Miss Universe or talking to like the biggest YouTubers, they're like, you used to work for the US government and you used to work in nonprofits. They're like, we can't really imagine you in that space. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's why I left. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine it either. So I stopped.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly, exactly. So the early days of my career, I did my undergrad at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. I majored in culture and politics. And that was really the best major for me, to be honest, because it was the intersection of culture, which I love all of these diverse backgrounds and like ways of living, right? And then politics. So like the governance structures that allow countries or decision makers or leaders to really make the best decisions for their people, right? It is that intersection, right? We don't make decisions globally in a silo. So being able to infuse and think thoughtfully about the different religious groups or the different ethnic and cultural groups in a country and apply that to governance was incredible. I loved my time at Georgetown, my 4 years there. Immediately after graduating from Georgetown, I joined the Peace Corps. So I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in South Africa. And during my time in the Peace Corps, I was an education volunteer. So I was specifically targeted at enhancing literacy programs in this rural community that I lived in and also doing a bit of public health work as well. South Africa has a really high HIV/AIDS rate in crisis. So I think that no matter what kind of work you're doing, even if it's education, you're going to be doing some HIV/AIDS and sexual health education because that's just really a critical component here. And personally, having conversations about safe and healthy sex is something that I personally love to do. So it was a really easy matriculation for me in the Peace Corps. After my 2.5 years of my Peace Corps service in South Africa, I extended for a third year and then moved to Cape Town, South Africa, which is where I am today. So shout out to Peace Corps because you got me to South Africa. I'd never been here before. And here I
Gorgeous
am
country.
based here. Yeah, literally. Here I am based here all these years later. So I started working for a nonprofit. And so during my time at that nonprofit, I was a global partnerships manager. So I was basically based in South Africa, but scaling our company, scaling our programs and methodology for youth empowerment and community engagement around public health and around educational programs. I was tasked with scaling that across the African continent and the Western Pacific. So that's really actually what started my life of international travel for work. I had traveled before in my life. I was very blessed to have parents who moved us to different countries. I lived in Singapore for my first 2 years of high school. We traveled to different countries as well. We had family vacations to the UK, to Thailand, to Australia. You know, it was really incredible having this life that was like so global. But then I really started traveling heavily for work with this NGO job. Every single month, I was in a different country. I was in Nigeria. I was in Cameroon. I was in Botswana. I was in Equatorial Guinea. I was in Papua New Guinea. I was in Ghana. Like I honestly, Katura, I can tell you, I have been to 21 countries on the African continent
Wow.
alone.
Wow.
And that is like unheard of. And I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity and that I had that experience because that's something that most people don't get to experience, let alone Black Americans.
Most
We
definitely.
rarely we rarely get to explore the continent in that kind of way. And I'm so grateful that I had the chance to do that. And so being based in Cape Town, traveling the African continent, I really had the opportunity to, travel the world and to meet all these incredible people. And I was facilitating workshops for diplomats, for heads of state, for the Minister of Health of Mozambique. And
And
so
and
on the outside,
that is what's so cool. Like you traveled all around the continent. You were based in gorgeous Cape Town, and you were doing important work. So in many
right.
folks' eyes, you got it all. You have the good government job. You get
Yeah,
to travel on their dime, and you're doing important work. Girls,
exactly.
how you gonna do that?
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was about to say. It was so glamorous on the outside that even I got lost in the sauce, right? When you're traveling all the time and you are on the high and you're racking up frequent flyer miles. And, for me, my role was very client facing. So I was actually working working directly with these tremendous community-based organizations across the continent that were doing phenomenal work for young people. I was working directly with them. I was directly investing stakeholders in civil society, in the private sector, in government to invest in these programs and in these young people. So it was very glamorous on the outside. But from the beginning, I always knew that working at a nonprofit, and even though I was based in South Africa, the company was American. The headquarters were in the United States, in Vermont, of all places. So you can already kind of guess what leadership looked like. And if you can't guess, let me tell you, it was all white. Okay. And so here I was at this
Shocker.
company. Shocker. Drop the mic right there. And so here I was working for this company that was exclusively serving brown and black people across the globe, yet none of those brown and black people were the decision makers. And I always knew that that was a problem. I always knew that. And it really wasn't until COVID hit and all of a sudden local staff in South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe started losing their job, but white leadership in the United States didn't lose their jobs. And there were ideas about how to pivot programs. There were ideas about how to pivot programs that were coming forward from the South African, Zambian, and Zimbabwean staff that we had. And those ideas weren't taken into account. The white American and white European leadership said, we're going to do it like this. And there was no more integration of people's perspectives. There was no decision making happening from people of color. And really, what really kind of set me off was that I took a look around me and realized that I was the only person of color on the global team.
Now see,
And I'm American. So not only am I the only person of color, I'm also American, which is already a power hierarchy, you know?
that wow. And what's funny is funny in an effed up way, not ha way, is that as you were explaining that, especially leadership structure, I was not surprised because I too worked on the continent, lived and traveled on the continent, and those NGOs, it was just always just absolutely overwhelming to me how that is the prototype for so many NGOs that are doing good work, that are partnering with these African community organizations, and COVID hits, and then all the Africans lost their lost their jobs. So I can just
Make
see
it make
how
sense.
exactly, exactly. Please, just a little bit of sense. So I can see how that was the ultimate wake up call for you. So when you had this realization, okay, so all the black people except for me is gone. I'm an American at that. I'm making these decisions and working with these very much white power brokers. And here I am doing this important work, but in this framework. Did you immediately sort of like have this very dramatic, like movie, I'm out of here with this monologue in which you read them the riot act? What was your next move? Because I can imagine that it for me, if I were in that situation, it would have been a little offsetting, off-putting. I needed a minute to sort of get myself together, and also the reality of, you know, South Africa ain't cheap either, Cape, especially Cape Town, right? So I got the bills to pay. So what was your next move when you were like, "Oh, this what we doing. This who you people are."
Yeah. Let me at least preface it by saying I can honestly say it took me 2 years to quit. And I want to say that because I think a lot of people, and especially people of color, and especially women of color, like there are so many factors and sort of points of contention that we have to deal with before we can actually make that leap. Like it's really easy to sit here and say, like, just quit, follow your heart, trust your gut. Like, yeah, that's the dream. That's what we all want to do. But the reality was that it took me 2 years to make the decision to leave. It was a buildup of so many different events and so many different things. Um, but I will say that on the day I actually made the decision, it was seamless. It was a seamless decision. I remember Katura. Let me tell you, it was a Sunday night. I took a bath. I had all these like Egyptian salt rocks. I had incense burning. I had candles burning. I was having this like beautiful moment of self love and self care. I had my journal. I was journaling And I was just like, I was on such a high. I was just like writing down all my hopes and my dreams and my passions and my creativity. And I was just like, I had this absolutely beautiful moment where I just felt so authentically me, so grateful. And I just had this beautiful sort of aura around me. I distinctly remember the next morning, Monday morning, I started work again at that job, at that company, and my mood went from 150 to like 2. And I felt how down I was. I felt how disappointed and how off I was. And in that moment, that Monday morning, after such a beautiful, ceremonious, spiritual, heartwarming Sunday evening where I was really doing me and I had to go back to this job and it completely let me be honest, it completely effed up my mood. I was like, "No, this is it. Today is the day." And really, it was very easy from that point. And I think, it took me the 2 years to get to that point, right? Like, it sounds like, okay, it was one night I had this, like, revelation. It took me those full 2 years of contemplating decision making. I had to be ready. But
And
on that at that moment.
just for a quick second, I know you can't give me every single thought you had, but I do wanna outline what that 2-year journey was like, because I think anyone can infer that you just had financial decisions, like, I'm not independently wealthy, so I need to be able to figure out how I'm gonna pay my bills. It could have been a little bit still holding on to enjoying the work, but if you can outline as best as possible what you were struggling with or what you were dealing with and thinking about to give for those 24 months for you to finally that night before have your salt bath and then say this is it. Like what was going through your mind and what was the refiguring you had to do?
That's an excellent question. And it was actually less about finances because, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, let me look at my background. Like, I'm a Georgetown grad, I'm a mixed race woman working in the US market. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I'm a United Nations fellow. I have a lot of things on my resume that could find me a job in 2 seconds. So it wasn't really that. It was
Mm.
really one thing that really prohibited me from moving forward was the visa. I didn't wanna move out of South Africa. My visa was tied to this company, and I didn't know how I was gonna stay in South Africa if I left the company. Because if I left the company, they were gonna terminate my visa, and then that meant I had to go back to the United States, and your girl, Nikki Banz, is not trying to move permanently back to the United States. So I was like, "Oh gosh." I was like, "Rather stay at this whack company and at least I'm in South Africa, than have to move back to the US." And, no shade to all y'all out there working in the US. Keep fighting the good fight. It's not me, but I see you. So the visa was a huge inhibiting factor. That was number one. Um, and then really, I think this this feeling that a lot of us, and I say us as folks of color, like it is in our nature to do our best to make things the best that they can possibly be. We care. We are community focused. When we are doing work and we see injustice happening, we don't want to exit that situation. We want to make that situation better. So I was trying for years to make that company better. I was sending emails that I needed to send that were ruffling feathers, but I didn't care. I was having conversations with leadership, trying to get them to realize that there are unjust practices in employment, in hiring, in pay, in all these things. I was trying to have those conversations and I tried and I tried and I tried for 2 years and I realized that like nothing was going to change. And as much as I tried and as hard as I tried, I had to be like, you know what? If I want to make these changes, I need to make them on my own terms and in my own way because going through this company, it's not going to work. And
Mm.
that's really between the and between trying to make that company better. That's why I stayed for those 2 years, even though I was having feelings of leaving and I wanted to leave and I wasn't happy. I was trying. I was trying to make it better, and it didn't work.
Oh, wow. So you were like, "No, I'm not gonna just burn the whole town down. I want them to know that there needs to be change, and I'm gonna actually try to initiate." Um, Kudos to you because that is an undertaking that I can imagine was exhausting in of itself, in addition to your having this realization, this is a colonizing NGO like many of them, and I want to move on, like, kudos to you. So you make the decision, You realize that this is a fight that I've given it my all, but I'm not going to invest in this, and I'm also ready to move on to something else. Actually, curious, did you always have, even while you're doing this fabulous work and had this great life and doing this important work with a kind of shady work, but still important work, did you sort of have latent desires to be an entertainer, to be in the creative field where you are in front of the camera, interviewing global influencers and being a presenter? Did you always have that, or did that really just sort of pop in your head as a result of realizing where I am now, I need to not be, and also maybe let me try this? Was it always a spark though?
It's funny because at the time when I made a decision, it really felt like it was out of nowhere. Like, I'll tell you right now, Katara, I quit my job in March 2021. And I not only quit the job, I quit the whole sector. And that was when I decided to burn the bridges because, I was like, okay, I worked hard for 2 years trying to make this better. Now y'all don't want to see the light. I'm going to make y'all see the light. So that's when I burned all the bridges. I posted on social media. I had a viral post on LinkedIn. You know how hard it is to go viral on LinkedIn? I had
That's
60,000 views on my
wow.
LinkedIn post.
You were like, "What's that Kermit the Frog meme?"
Yeah, literally. I had 60,000 views on my post about leaving an institutionally racist NGO. And what was so beautiful about that was it was folks from both sides. It was Americans saying we see this and we know it's wrong and we're also trying to do better. And it was host country nationals. It was people from the countries that we were quote unquote serving, that the US government and all these nonprofits are quote unquote serving, saying these are exactly the same issues that we have, but we can't say anything about it because we are not American. We can't say anything about it because we have to survive and support our families. So thank you for saying something about it. And that was the thing for me always. I was so uniquely positioned. Because I'm American, I had access to this white American leadership because I would be privy to conversation because of my passport. Let me be totally honest. But at the same time, because I was a person of color, I also was privy to conversations from my African counterparts, from my counterparts across the Western Pacific. They would feel comfortable sharing things with me because I am of them, right? We skin folk, we can folk. And so I was always in this spot where I could hear both sides of the story. And eventually, like I said, when I quit, I burned the bridges. And then, it took me a couple of months of just like settling. I'm not gonna lie. I definitely just like sat on my parents' couch for like 3 months, and all I did was watch Law and Order SVU. That's all I did for 3 months. I was like, I didn't
Fair,
take any phone calls.
fair.
I didn't take no phone calls. I wasn't entertaining any job requests. I wasn't entertaining anything. I was like, nope. And at the end of that, I thought, okay, what am I gonna do next? And it felt like a very spur of the moment decision. I literally went onto LinkedIn and I was like, okay, I need to be in a position where I can speak my truth. I loved facilitating. I love speaking at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. I loved being on my feet and doing fun energizers and icebreakers. I was like, so how do I continue to have a social impact across the globe and do it on my terms and reach the masses? I was like, I'm going to be a TV show host. And so with no TV show to my name, all I did was go onto LinkedIn and change my headline to say TV show host. And I was like, okay, between LinkedIn and me manifesting to the universe, that's a lethal combination right there. I was like, do your thing, LinkedIn and universe, do your thing. And, look at me now. Look at me now, 3 years later. And now, though, now that I'm in it, now I can reflect back and say, like, oh, actually, I was hosting a show for my local educational TV network when I was, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. I was on my feet hosting school pep rallies when I lived in Singapore in 10th grade, for 1,500 people. I was on the mic leading the school pep rally. So it is now that I'm in it that I can reflect back and be like, oh, actually, there were these moments where being on the microphone, being in front of, hundreds of people, thousands of people, there were moments where I had that before. In the moment, it felt like that was a radically new idea, being a TV show host and being a global MC and presenter. But really, when I reflect back on it, yes, there were absolutely little
A little
points
seed.
throughout. Yeah, seeds were planted throughout the journey, girl.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And how does it feel now, these 3 years living in what you said then was just like spur of the moment thing, like, "I'm gonna be a TV presenter," but when you look back on it, was like, "No, this has always been a kernel for who I am." What's the feeling in your body, especially compared to when you were working for the colonizer?
You know what? I have to say that every day when I wake up and I no longer have a 9 to 5, I can be authentically me, which is what I said earlier, right? This is what brings me joy. If I want to wake up and go swim in the ocean, I can go swim in the ocean. If I want to stay up all night emceeing something on Zoom for clients, I can. If a client says, "Hey, we need you in London next week, can you be there?" The answer is yes. Right? I don't have to put in leave to anyone. I don't have to ask anyone for permission. I don't have to justify why I should be able to be flown or sent to this conference or to this thing. I live a life now that is very explicitly on my terms. And, look, the reality is that that takes a lot of courage. It's actually one of the reasons why I have stayed in South Africa is because I've before I realized, how my structures and systems would work, what my governance looks like for me as my own brand, as my own company, I was like, I don't really know how much money I'm gonna make. And the reality is, I was like, let me stay in South Africa because at least I'm gonna be, I'm gonna have US clients paying me US dollars and I can live in Rand where the exchange rate is heavily in my favor. It's one of the reasons why I'm still based here now because deciding to go out creatively on your own path is really hard, it's really daunting, and it's really challenging, and even though it's gonna bring you a lot of joy, it might not immediately pad your bank account. Like,
Mm.
let's be honest.
I was
Let's be
gonna say, you
honest.
better speak the truth. That's the real truth. And I appreciate your being very, very um, forthright about that because there is a level of courage involved, and there's a level of courage involved because there's a huge level of risk. But as you have exhibited, you just calculate the risk and you make the smartest choice you can. So let me stay in South Africa where the rand goes a lot further based on my having a US dollar, et cetera, and work it out. So I want to be able because I have several mentees who are in their early 20s, and I just remember who I was in my early 20s. I want to be able to give younger women honest, realistic advice for when they are in a situation in their work and professional life that doesn't feel right. If you can go back and look at, because you said, "I kinda always knew about that NGO, that nonprofit." If you could go back and look at what led you to the road to taking that particular job, and you had to advise a younger woman, life be life, and you sometimes make choices and take, jobs that may not be most authentic to you, but, you do it because life be life. But if you could say, keep this in mind when you're starting out and you may not have as much negotiation power to choose exactly what you want because you're starting out, et cetera, et cetera. But what should you keep in mind when you are thinking about my professional path when I choose to work with certain organizations or when I choose to do certain things and make decisions in life? What is should be a guiding principle you think they should have in the back of their head? So even though they don't get exactly what they want, they're at least staying as true as possible to their authentic selves.
What I would tell young women or young people who are trying to make a decision around what the future of their life looks like when they're unhappy in their job, in their work, whatever it is, the guiding principle that I would share is that sometimes you have to quit, full stop, cold turkey, before you can figure out what's next. And part of the reason that I spent 2 years back and forth, should I quit, should I not, is because I had a colonized perception of work in my head that told me that I can't quit this job without a new job. And everyone kept telling me, "Okay, if you don't like this job, just get a new job." But something in my gut was like, "I don't want to get another job. I can't still be in this system and in this mindset and in this industry. I don't want to just get a new job in this industry and go from one colonizer to the next. That's not what I want to do." And I couldn't figure out that actually just quitting and saying no to everything was gonna be the thing that would open doors to me being an entrepreneur. That would open doors to me running my own brand and my own business. That would open doors to me being the one having my own clients as opposed to having a company tell me these are our clients. And so my guiding principle would be that sometimes you need to just quit completely in order to have clarity and close the door on an old chapter so that you can open the door to a new one.
That's beautiful. And again, that takes a lot. lots and lots of courage. And literally, like you said, and again, I appreciate your being completely honest, having this colonizer mindset, like I can't quit without having something else. And it sounds like what you're saying is just sit in silence. The quitting is sitting in silence and really listening to what you want, what you really need. And it's hard to do that when you are still in the situation that isn't fulfilling to you. That's profound. Thank you, Nikki man.
Of course, you know, and I think it's like it's so much easier said than done. It took me a long time to figure it out, and I had to be in a place financially. I had to be in a place in terms of my visa status. I had to be in a place where, you know, some of those logistics were in order before I could actually take that leap. And I think for young people of color in particular, the reality is like you might be the first person in your family who went to college. You might be the primary breadwinner for your family. And if like money and those sorts of things are consideration, then you can't just quit cold turkey, right? It does take time for you to be able to build up a base and make sure that your bank account is okay and build up clients or whatever it is. You know, so I want to be really honest about that, that I was so grateful to have been in a situation both financially and in terms of the visa and personally to be able to say, okay, I can quit. And if I don't pick up a client in the first 6 months, if I don't pick up a client in the first year, I'm still okay. I have savings. I've built this up over the past 10 years. You know, I'm able to do that and I'm able to say that. I know that's not the case for everyone, but once you are able to do that and you take into those considerations and you feel like, okay, you're trusting that gut, trusting that intuition. Once you feel like you can actually make that leap, then you have to do it. You have
Mm,
to.
excellent. And that is the perfect place to end this amazing conversation. And I want you to tell us where we can find you, what you're up to, where we follow you. Just give us the low on how to keep up with Miss Nikki Band.
Absolutely. Well, you can follow your girl Nicole Bannister, aka Nikki Banz, on Instagram. My handle is at They Call Me Banz, Banz. Yes, Banz will make her dance. Yes, I said it. So I'm on Instagram at They Call Me Banz. You can find me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ at Nicole Bannister, aka Nikki Banz. I'm also on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there. And my incredible show started up, which follows student entrepreneurs across the globe as they pitch their social impact businesses the chance to win $50,000. Season 3 coming out soon on YouTube and on Water Bear. Your girl is the hostess with the mostest. So go check it out. Season 1 and 2 are already up on YouTube now. So yeah, go check it out.
Excellent. And we will. Thank you so much. Please get some rest before you go off jet setting again. Stay hydrated. You keep you some snacks in your bag. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Katura. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting with you. Thank you for this tremendous interview.